Welcome back to Sovereign Judgment, where suburban authority meets the one natural predator it cannot survive, a resident who reads the entire document. Today's story involves one allegedly loud pickup truck, one very confident HOA president, and enough brass instruments to make Sunrise file a noise complaint. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from, because I need to know how far the sound of 18 trombones can legally travel. All right, let's wake the neighborhood. At 6:02 on a Saturday morning, I stood in my driveway wearing pizza print socks, holding a conductor's baton in one hand and a mug of coffee in the other. The coffee was already cold. This was not unusual. My coffee had spent most of its life at room temperature, like it was participating in a long-term experiment about disappointment. What was unusual was the 42-foot marching band trailer parked beside my garage. Its side panels had folded outward into a covered rehearsal platform. Aluminum steps descended onto my driveway. LED stand lights glowed beneath the awning. 18 musicians sat in 2 disciplined rows, their instruments polished so brightly that the sunrise bounced off them and hit the Hendersons' upstairs window like a tactical flashlight. There were 6 trumpets, 4 trombones, 3 saxophones, 2 sousaphones, 2 snare drums, and 1 bass drum large enough to qualify as a studio apartment in several major cities. At the end of my driveway stood Patricia Bellwether, president of the Maple Crest Estates Homeowners Association. She was wearing a lavender bathrobe over a floral nightgown that looked like a botanical garden had been forced through a paper shredder. Her hair was trapped in 12 pink foam rollers. She held her clipboard against her chest, like it contained launch codes. Behind her, parked diagonally across my mailbox, was her red HOA golf cart, with a flashing amber light mounted on top. The light was on. Of course it was. Patricia stared at the band. The band stared at Patricia. A sousaphone player named Howard Pike quietly adjusted his mouthpiece. Patricia raised one trembling finger. "You cannot do this." I checked my watch. Actually, we started 1 minute late. Her face tightened like someone had just told her beige was not a personality. Then she heard the drum major count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the Maple Crest Community Marching Ensemble launched into Stars and Stripes Forever with the enthusiasm of a naval invasion, sponsored by a music store. Patricia screamed, but the piccolo section erased her from the audio landscape. To explain why 18 respectable adults were performing John Philip Sousa in my driveway, before most people had located their slippers, I need to go back 6 weeks, to the morning Patricia Bellwether decided my truck was too loud. I bought my house at 1147 Lantern Pine Drive 8 years earlier. It was a modest, 1-story brick place with a deep garage, a maple tree in the front yard, and a back porch that caught the evening sun between 6:10 and 7:40 during summer. I knew that because I had measured it. I measure things when I'm stressed. Some people meditate, some people bake. I open spreadsheets and determine the exact angle of sunlight across patio furniture. The house had belonged to my grandfather, Daniel Mercer, who had built the detached workshop himself in 1989. Every shelf leaned 3 degrees to the left. Every drawer contained at least 1 mystery screw, and the workbench still had a burn mark from the time he tried to repair a toaster with a propane torch. It was imperfect in all the ways that made it mine. When he died, I spent nearly every weekend for a year repairing the place. I replaced the roof, rewired the workshop, rebuilt the porch steps, and restored his old rocking chair using wood from the original fence. The rocking chair squeaked every 4th movement. I could have fixed it. I never did. For work, I reviewed transportation projects for construction firms and municipalities. Most of my day involved traffic patterns, zoning restrictions, access permits, and noise impact reports. I was the person developers called when they needed to know whether a delivery truck could legally reverse into a loading zone at 5:45 in the morning without awakening 3 apartment buildings and a nervous dentist. It was not glamorous work. Nobody had ever made an action movie about a man verifying decibel calculations in khaki trousers. But it taught me 2 things. Rules matter. And most people who threaten you with rules have not read them. My truck was a 12-year-old blue Ford F-250 with 138,442 miles on it, a dent above the rear passenger wheel, and an engine that sounded exactly like a truck engine. It was not modified. It did not have an aftermarket exhaust. It did not roll coal, roar, bark, whistle, or announce itself with the mating call of a mechanical rhinoceros. I used it to tow equipment, haul lumber, and transport the occasional refrigerator for a friend who had lied about owning a vehicle large enough to move a refrigerator. Every weekday, I left home at 6:45 a.m. I started the truck, waited about 20 seconds, backed out, and drove away. The entire process took less time than Patricia Bellwether spent adjusting her golf cart mirrors. For 8 years, nobody cared. Then Patricia became HOA president. Her predecessor, Walter Nunn, had been a retired science teacher who ran board meetings in 19 minutes and believed an HOA's primary responsibility was making sure the pool pump worked. Walter's entire enforcement philosophy consisted of the sentence, "Just try to keep it reasonable." Under Walter, the association had an annual picnic, a modest reserve fund, and no active lawsuits. Under Patricia, the association acquired branded polo shirts. That should have warned us. Patricia won the presidency by 4 votes after campaigning on a platform she called Restoring Residential Excellence. Her campaign flyers included a photograph of her pointing at an untrimmed hedge, like she had discovered organized crime. Within 3 weeks, she had formed a compliance oversight committee, a neighborhood presentation task force, and something called the Residential Harmony Initiative. Nobody knew what the Residential Harmony Initiative did. Patricia did not know either. But she had ordered laminated badges. The morning she confronted me, I had just closed my truck door when her golf cart swept around the corner at roughly 9 miles per hour, the amber light flashing as if she were responding to a mulch emergency. She stopped behind my truck, blocking the road. Patricia stepped out wearing white slacks ironed so sharply they could have separated deli meat, a coral polo shirt embroidered with the maple crest, and pearl earrings large enough to influence local tides. Her clipboard was pale blue. I later learned she owned 7 clipboards, each assigned to a different category of resident failure. "Mr. Mercer," she called. Her voice had the tonal quality of a fork trying to escape a garbage disposal. I looked at my watch. "Good morning." "It is not a good morning for everyone." "I'm sorry to hear that." She approached with the posture of a 4-star general, inspecting troops who had planted the wrong variety of petunia. "I have received multiple complaints regarding the excessive noise generated by your commercial-grade vehicle. It's a pickup truck. It is an F-250. That is the model of the pickup truck. It has a diesel engine. It has a gasoline engine." She glanced down at her clipboard. "That is not the information I was given." "Who gave you the information?" She looked at me like I had asked to see the original Constitution. "The identities of complainants are confidential." "How many complaints were there?" "Multiple." "2? I am not required to disclose that." "Were both of them you?" Her lips compressed into a line so thin it could have been used to level a bookshelf. "The issue is not who complained. The issue is that your vehicle creates an unacceptable disturbance during designated quiet enjoyment hours under Section 8, Paragraph 14, Subsection C, of the Maple Crest Community Standards." I knew Section 8. Section 8 covered holiday decorations. Paragraph 14 prohibited inflatable lawn ornaments more than 9 feet tall. Subsection C specified that any Santa Claus visible after January 10 could be removed by the association after written notice. I leaned against my truck. "What does subsection C say?" Patricia blinked. "The relevant language is clear." "I agree. It says I can't leave a 9-foot inflatable Santa in my yard after January 10. This is not about Santa Claus." "Then we may be in the wrong subsection." Her eyes moved across the clipboard like 2 searchlights looking for an escaped prisoner. "The exact numbering may have been updated in the digital version." "I have the digital version." Patricia recovered quickly. People like Patricia do not retreat. They rotate the battlefield until they are standing on something that looks like confidence. "The broader point," she said, "is that residents have a right to peace. So do pickup trucks. Machines do not have rights, Mr. Mercer. That explains leaf blowers." She inhaled through her nose with a sound like a shop vacuum discovering gravel. "Beginning immediately, you are not to start this vehicle before 7:30 a.m. I leave for work at 6:45. Then you will need to make alternative arrangements." "Based on which rule?" "Based on my authority as president of this association." "That's not a rule. It is an instruction." "That's not a rule either." She straightened. and for the first time I noticed how tightly she was gripping the clipboard. If you refuse to cooperate, the board may issue fines of up to $100 per occurrence. Is the board meeting about this? The board has delegated enforcement authority to me. Where? She tilted her head. Excuse me? Where is that delegation written? Patricia's smile appeared slowly, like a crack forming in a frozen pond. You appear to believe this is a negotiation. I'm trying to determine whether it's anything. For a moment, neither of us spoke. A sprinkler clicked across the Hendersons' lawn. Somewhere nearby, a garage door opened. Patricia lowered her voice. You have until Monday to confirm that the vehicle will no longer be operated during restricted hours. If you fail to comply, the association will take action. Then she turned, marched back to the golf cart, and drove away with the amber beacon flashing over an empty residential street. I stood there beside my completely legal truck with my keys in one hand and my coffee in the other. The coffee was cold again. My first instinct was to laugh. My second was to worry. HOAs do not need to be correct to make your life expensive. They only need stationery, access to a lawyer, and enough free time to confuse persistence with evidence. That evening, I reviewed every governing document associated with Maple Crest Estates. The declaration contained 68 pages. The bylaws contained 31. The community standards contained 44, plus a 12-page architectural appendix devoted largely to sheds. There was no rule prohibiting residents from starting ordinary passenger vehicles during quiet hours. There was a rule against excessive engine idling lasting more than 10 consecutive minutes, between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. There was a rule against unlicensed commercial vehicles. There was a rule against repairing transmission systems in driveways. My truck did not violate any of them. I emailed Patricia a calm response at 8:14 p.m. Dear Ms. Bellwether, I reviewed the governing documents and could not locate a provision prohibiting vehicle operation before 7:30 a.m. Please provide the exact rule and the date on which it was adopted. For reference, my vehicle is privately registered, factory equipped, and operated for less than 1 minute in my driveway. Regards, James Mercer. She responded 9 minutes later. Your interpretation is noted. That phrase is the bureaucratic equivalent of someone loading a crossbow. On Monday, I received a violation notice. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and embossed with the Maple Crest crest in metallic gold. It looked like a wedding invitation sent by people who wanted to marry me to a fine. The notice accused me of repeated disruptive vehicular activity. Fine, $100. Evidence, direct observation. Time of violation, 6:43 a.m. Duration, approximately 15 minutes. That was impressive, considering my doorbell camera showed the truck starting at 6:44:18 and leaving the driveway at 6:44:53. 35 seconds. I saved the video. I created a folder. Then I created a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet worked on the first try. That is how I knew Patricia was in danger. On Tuesday, she posted in the Maple Crest Residents Facebook group. Reminder, community harmony requires sacrifice. Certain residents have chosen personal convenience over the well-being of their neighbors by operating industrial vehicles during sensitive morning hours. The board will continue enforcing all applicable standards. She did not name me. She included a photograph of my truck. The photograph had been taken from my driveway. I commented beneath it. Could you provide the applicable standard? The post disappeared 4 minutes later. At 7:03 that evening, I received a second violation notice for publicly challenging an active compliance matter in a manner likely to create neighborhood hostility. Fine, $75. I added it to the spreadsheet. By Friday, the total reached $375. One fine alleged that I had allowed the truck to remain visually prominent because it was parked in my driveway at 4:20 p.m. One alleged that tire tracks on my own concrete created an industrial appearance. One alleged that my factory-installed tow mirrors were commercial accessories. Patricia's enforcement strategy was expanding like foam insulation inside a wall. Sticky, unnecessary, and increasingly difficult to explain to professionals. I requested a hearing. She scheduled it for 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, when most residents were at work. I took the morning off. The meeting was held in the clubhouse conference room beneath a framed photograph of Patricia shaking hands with the mayor of a neighboring town. The mayor looked surprised to be involved. Patricia sat at the center of a folding table, wearing a navy blazer, with shoulder pads like she expected to negotiate an international surrender. Beside her sat board treasurer Gordon Lyle and secretary Elaine Porter. Gordon was a narrow man, with rimless glasses, and the permanent expression of someone trying to remember whether he had locked his car. Elaine was 72, quietly observant, and knitting something that appeared to be either a scarf or a warning flag. Patricia placed my file on the table. It was nearly 2 inches thick. "You have been given repeated opportunities to correct your conduct," she began. "I asked for the rule. Your continued focus on technicalities demonstrates a lack of good faith." "The governing documents are technicalities? They are living documents. Then they should be easier to locate." Gordon coughed into his hand. Elaine's knitting needles clicked faster. Patricia opened the file. Section 11, paragraph 3, grants the board authority to regulate nuisances. It grants the board authority to address persistent nuisances after notice, investigation, and a majority vote. This is a persistent nuisance. Where is the investigation? My direct observations. Where is the vote? The board supports me. I looked at Gordon. Did you vote? Gordon adjusted his glasses. We have not held a formal vote. Patricia turned toward him with a smile like a shark discovering a witness. The board has expressed consensus. Elaine looked up from her knitting. I said his truck never bothered me. Patricia's head rotated slowly. You agreed that excessive noise can be disruptive. I also agreed that rain is wet. We didn't find the clouds. I would have followed Elaine into combat. Patricia tapped the file. The association has received 14 complaints. May I see them? No. Can you confirm they came from 14 different residents? I will not violate resident confidentiality. Can you confirm they came from more than one resident? Her nostrils flared. The volume of complaints is not the issue. That sounds like one resident. Gordon studied the tabletop. Elaine knitted with the focused serenity of a woman making a noose for bureaucracy. I slid a printed page across the table. This is the doorbell footage from each alleged violation. It includes timestamps. The longest my truck remained running in the driveway was 41 seconds. Patricia did not look at it. Video cannot capture the full lived experience of sound. It has audio. Consumer recording devices are not calibrated. I also have a reading from a Type 2 sound level meter. That made her pause. I placed another report on the table. At the property line, the truck measured 56 decibels during startup and 48 at idle. The city morning limit is 65. Patricia stared at the report. You conducted a private noise study? I measured my truck. Without board authorization. Your authorization is not required to use a sound meter on my property. Her face tightened like a purse clasp in a thunderstorm. She closed the file. The fines stand. Based on what evidence? My determination. Then please note in the minutes that you declined to review time-stamped video and calibrated sound data. Gordon looked at Patricia. That should probably go in the minutes. It will not, she said. Elaine stopped knitting. I'm the secretary. The room became very quiet. Patricia gathered her papers. This hearing is concluded. As I stood, she added, if the account remains unpaid after 30 days, late fees and collection costs will apply. Continued noncompliance may result in a lien. She delivered the word lien like a stage magician revealing a tiger. I felt a pulse of anger move through me, not because of the money, because she was threatening my grandfather's house over 35 seconds of ordinary engine noise. For half a second, I pictured myself slapping the clipboard out of her hands and watching the paper scatter across the clubhouse like frightened pigeons. Instead, I picked up my coffee. It was cold. Please send everything in writing, I said. Then I left. Patricia escalated immediately. She hired a towing company to patrol the neighborhood. She instructed the landscaping crew to photograph my driveway. She sent a certified letter claiming that my truck might be subject to removal as an unauthorized commercial apparatus. She called my employer and left a message asking whether industrial transportation activity was part of my job. My employer, a project manager named Susan Delgado, called me into her office. Susan was 5 feet 2 inches tall and wore reading glasses on a chain. She had the calm, compressed energy of a pressure cooker with a law degree hidden inside it. James, she said, A woman called Patricia Bellwether wants to know whether we require you to drive a blue truck. I'm sorry? She also asked whether the company carries environmental noise insurance. That is not a thing. I know. I told her we insure against dragons separately. I rubbed my forehead. Susan pushed a printed voicemail transcript across her desk. Is this harassment? It's becoming creative. Do you need legal help? Not yet. She leaned back. Do not wait until not yet becomes, why is there a process server in the lobby? I added the voicemail to the folder. The folder now contained 23 documents, 9 videos, 4 photographs, and 1 screenshot of Patricia calling my truck a mobile refinery on Facebook. Then she called the police. It happened on a Thursday morning at 6:46. I had driven 2 houses down when blue lights appeared behind me. I pulled over. Officer Dennis Rourke approached my window with the expression of a man who had been dispatched to too many disputes involving recycling bins. He was broad-shouldered, gray-haired, and moved like a walrus who had completed several municipal training seminars. Morning? He said. Morning. Is there a mechanical problem with your vehicle? No. Did you rev the engine repeatedly? No. Did you sound the horn? No. Did you threaten anyone with the truck? No. Officer Rourke looked back toward my house. Patricia stood in the street beside her golf cart, wearing a neon safety vest over her pajamas and holding the clipboard. He closed his eyes briefly. She says you've been operating heavy machinery in violation of quiet hours. I started my truck and left for work. How long did it run? 37 seconds. Of course you know the exact number. I have video. Of course you have video. Patricia marched toward us. Officer, this man has repeatedly ignored lawful directives issued by the Homeowners Association under Section 8, Paragraph 14. Santa Claus, I said. Officer Rourke looked at me. Excuse me? That section regulates oversized Christmas decorations. Patricia's voice rose like a kettle, realizing nobody respected it. The numbering has been updated. Officer Rourke held up one hand. Ma'am, did the truck violate a city noise ordinance? It violated community standards. That's civil. It is a threat to residential peace. Did he threaten you? Not verbally. Officer Rourke stared at her. Did he threaten you non-verbally? The vehicle itself is intimidating. Officer Rourke looked at my truck. The truck had a faded parking permit on the windshield and a small stuffed moose hanging from the rearview mirror. He returned his gaze to Patricia. Ma'am, a parked Ford is not making a threat. It was running. Engines do that. Patricia gripped the clipboard. So you're refusing to enforce the law? I'm refusing to invent one. Her mouth opened. Officer Rourke handed me my license. You're free to go. Then he turned to Patricia. This is a man going to work, not a siege engine. He walked back to his patrol car. That was the first moment I began to understand exactly what kind of plan would work. Patricia did not merely want quiet. She wanted obedience. If I replaced the truck with a bicycle, she would have fined the bell. If I left at noon, she would have objected to the shadow. The truck was not the issue. The issue was that she had issued an instruction, and I had asked her to prove she possessed the authority behind it. People like Patricia can survive almost anything except a calm request for documentation. That evening, I attended the monthly HOA meeting. 37 residents showed up, which was 29 more than usual. Patricia had managed to make my truck the most interesting thing in Maple Crest since a raccoon entered the pool house in 2021. She stood at the front of the clubhouse beneath a projector screen displaying the words Community Tranquility Amendment. The proposed amendment prohibited unnecessary motorized noise between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. It defined unnecessary noise as anything the board determined to be inconsistent with the character of peaceful residential life. That language was so vague it could have criminalized sneezing with intent. I raised my hand. What objective standard will the board use? Patricia smiled. The board will evaluate each situation individually. So no objective standard. Community standards cannot always be reduced to numbers. They can if the issue is noise. This is also about behavior. What behavior? Disregard for one's neighbors. A man behind me whispered, "She means him." Another man whispered, "We know, Gary." Patricia clicked to the next slide. A paragraph appeared in bold. However, she said, the amendment includes reasonable exemptions for emergency services, municipal operations, school transportation, recognized civic ceremonies, patriotic observances, and organized musical activities associated with community events. I looked at the screen. Then I looked at Patricia. That exemption was oddly specific. Elaine Porter, seated at the secretary's table, caught my eye. She slowly lowered her knitting. I raised my hand again. What qualifies as an organized musical activity associated with a community event? Patricia waved the question aside. Parades, holiday performances, school rehearsals, civic ensembles, normal community traditions. Could one take place on private property? If appropriately permitted, during the restricted period, the exemption would permit it, yes. Gordon leaned toward her. Patricia, maybe we should narrow. We will not allow hypothetical objections to derail common-sense governance. She called for a vote. The amendment passed 21-16. Patricia smiled at me from the front of the room like a woman who had personally outlawed combustion. I smiled back. The next morning, I called Marcus Big Mike Delaney. Mike owned Delaney Mobile Stages and Specialty Trailers in the fictional industrial district of Belford, 12 miles east of Maple Crest. I had met him 3 years earlier while reviewing a traffic plan for the Belford Founders Day Parade. He had arrived at the planning meeting carrying a breakfast burrito the size of a fire extinguisher and immediately corrected 6 errors in the city's loading diagram. Big Mike was shaped like a vending machine that had developed strong opinions about axle weight. He had a silver beard, a shaved head, and a voice that sounded like gravel being poured into a friendly cement mixer. When I explained the situation, he listened without interrupting. Then he said, "She passed a rule against your truck?" "Yes." "And wrote an exemption for civic music?" "Yes." "Did she do that because of the Memorial Day parade?" "I assume so." Mike laughed for 11 consecutive seconds. It began as a chuckle and expanded into something structural. "James," he said, "I have spent 32 years moving stages, floats, choirs, drum lines, livestock pens, and once a 12-foot fiberglass potato through places run by people with clipboards. I know this species." "What species?" "The self-appointed empress of 14 cul-de-sacs." He set down the phone, shouted something to an employee, then returned. "I have exactly what you need." "What is it?" "A 2021 Harmonic Transport Model MBS 42 Mobile Marching Rehearsal Trailer." I waited. "That sounds excessive." "Excessive is just appropriate wearing work boots." He explained that the trailer had been built for a regional college marching band before the college's booster organization lost funding. The sides unfolded into a rehearsal platform. It had instrument storage, integrated stand lighting, acoustic panels, a conductor's podium, power connections, safety rails, and a hydraulic leveling system. It was street legal. It was designed for organized musical rehearsals. It was also for sale. "How much?" $28,500. I nearly swallowed my tongue. "Mike, it was $68,000 new. I don't need a marching band trailer. Neither did Napoleon. Look what happened to him." "That does not support your argument." Mike lowered his voice. "You said you've got a workshop." "Yes." "You said you've wanted to start doing mobile event logistics on weekends." "I've considered it. This trailer rents for $1,400 a day. Buy it, use it for the lesson, then let it earn its keep." I stared at the spreadsheet on my computer. Mike continued, "And before you ask, it weighs 8,200 pounds. Your F-250 can tow it. The trailer itself is quieter than a landscaper dropping a rake. Your driveway has the length. Your side setback should clear it, assuming the plat is accurate. I would need a storage waiver. No. It's enclosed equipment under 35 feet when folded. It's 42 feet. The tongue and rear platform account for 7. The enclosed body is 34 feet, 11 inches. I sat up. Mike laughed again. "James, when a woman fights with decimals, you bring a man who sells things measured in eighths of an inch." I drove to Belford that afternoon. The trailer sat at the back of Mike's lot, between a mobile wedding stage and a concession trailer shaped like a giant lemonade cup. Folded, it looked like a long, silver equipment trailer with dark blue trim. The words Belford Regional Music Program had been removed, but faint outlines remained in the paint like the ghost of school spirit. Mike stood beside it, wearing overalls and holding a tape measure. In person, he looked like a refrigerator that could negotiate union contracts. He slapped the side panel. Hydraulics serviced last month. Tires have 80% tread. Electrical system is clean. Stage floor has one patched section, where a tuba player attempted to defeat gravity. He opened the rear doors. Inside were racks for instruments, folding chairs, music stands, safety cones, electrical cables, and a conductor's podium. It smelled faintly of brass polish and teenage ambition. I walked around the trailer twice. "This is ridiculous!" Mike nodded. "Completely. I can't believe I'm considering it." "That's because you're still thinking like a reasonable person." He handed me a folder. Inside were the title documents, specifications, prior inspection reports, and a manufacturer's letter confirming the trailer's purpose as a mobile rehearsal and civic performance platform. Mike had highlighted the relevant language. "You prepared this already? You called at 9:12. I knew you'd be here by 4. What if I had decided not to come? Then I'd have been wrong once this decade." I examined the hydraulic system. "What about sound?" Mike grinned. He led me into his office. Sitting behind the desk was Dr. Leonard Cho, director of the Belford Community Marching Ensemble. Leonard was a compact man in his late 50s with silver hair, rectangular glasses, and the alert posture of a person who could detect an off-tempo snare drum from another county. He wore a cardigan with tiny embroidered trumpets. Mike introduced us. Leonard shook my hand. "Mike tells me you may have a rehearsal opportunity." "That is one interpretation. What is the other?" "A controlled civic response to selective rule enforcement." Leonard's eyes brightened. "I like that interpretation more." The Belford Community Marching Ensemble was a volunteer group composed mostly of former high school and college musicians. They performed at parades, veterans events, charity fundraisers, and one annual pet adoption festival, where Leonard had once arranged Who Let the Dogs Out for brass and percussion. Their normal rehearsal space was being renovated. They needed somewhere to practice for the upcoming Lantern County Heritage Parade. I needed an organized musical activity associated with a community event. It was the kind of coincidence that makes sensible people nervous, and marching band directors reach for calendars. "We rehearse Saturdays," Leonard said, "usually 7 to 9. The amendment allows exempt activities beginning at 6. Leonard adjusted his glasses. "Are you asking us to rehearse at 6? "I'm asking whether you would be willing to begin at 6:01 for one Saturday." He considered this. "Full ensemble? I think the rule deserves full compliance." Leonard smiled. It was not a mischievous smile. It was the smile of a craftsman who had just been handed premium materials. "I have 6 trumpets who will arrive early for breakfast." Mike leaned back in his chair. "This is why arts funding matters." I did not buy the trailer that day. First, I built the legal foundation. I reviewed the new HOA amendment. I reviewed the county sound ordinance. I reviewed the city's temporary event rules, residential parking restrictions, trailer classifications, fire lane requirements, and setback standards. I pulled my property survey from the closing documents. I measured the driveway. Then I measured it again, because Patricia had taught me the spiritual value of redundancy. The trailer could fit entirely on my property, with 11 feet, 4 inches of clearance from the sidewalk. When folded, its enclosed body complied with the HOA's 35-foot equipment storage limit by 1 inch. The tongue extended beyond the measurement definition because the rule, written in 2004, specifically defined trailer length as the enclosed cargo body exclusive of hitch assembly. That sentence deserved flowers. The city noise ordinance allowed organized civic musical activity between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. with a no-cost community arts permit. The HOA amendment expressly exempted organized musical activities associated with community events if appropriately permitted. I applied for the permit. The application required the address, date, expected attendance, parking plan, sanitation access, and purpose. Under purpose, I wrote, "Rehearsal for the Lantern County Heritage Parade by the Belford Community Marching Ensemble." The permit was approved in 48 hours. I then contacted the city zoning office and requested written confirmation that the trailer could be parked in my driveway. A zoning technician named Carla Ruiz emailed, "The described trailer is permitted as personal event equipment, provided it remains fully within the property boundaries and does not obstruct the sidewalk or visibility triangle." I contacted my insurance company. The trailer could be added to my existing policy. I contacted a private acoustical consultant named Noel Barnes, who confirmed that the band's projected daytime sound levels would comply with the city exemption and permit. Noel was a tall, soft-spoken woman who wore noise reduction headphones around her neck like a stethoscope. She reviewed my documents and said, "Legally, you are cleaner than a laboratory spoon. Is that professional terminology? No. Professionally, I would say compliant." Finally, I called Officer Rourke at the non-emergency number. I did not ask permission. I informed him that a permitted community marching ensemble would rehearse at my property from 6:01 to 7:30 on Saturday, July 12. There was a long silence. Then he said, "Is this related to the truck?" "Yes." Another silence. "Do you have the permit?" "Yes." "Property clearance?" "Yes." "HOA exemption?" "Yes." "Will there be a sousaphone?" 2. Officer Rourke exhaled. "I'm off duty at 6. I thought you might appreciate advance notice." "I appreciate it in the same way a man appreciates seeing the train before it hits the crossing." I forwarded him the documents. Then I purchased the trailer. Mike reduced the price to $27,000 because one exterior light needed replacement, and because, in his words, justice should come with dealer incentives. The trailer arrived on Tuesday at 10:18 a.m. Mike towed it himself, with a black Ram 3500. Behind him came a service truck carrying wheel chocks, safety barriers, and hydraulic equipment. 3 neighbors emerged before the engine stopped. By the time Mike began backing into my driveway, 9 people were watching. Patricia arrived in under 4 minutes. She wore a white visor, a turquoise athletic jacket, and matching trousers that made her look like a cruise director preparing to enforce shuffleboard law. Her golf cart stopped at the curb. The amber light was flashing. She stepped out with the clipboard.
"What is that?"
Mike leaned out of his window. "Trailer. I can see that." Mike looked at me. "She's good." Patricia marched up the driveway. "You are not permitted to store commercial equipment on this property. It's privately owned event equipment," I said. "That trailer is enormous. The enclosed body is 34 feet, 11 inches. She froze for half a beat. "The limit is 35 feet, including all structural components. The rule excludes the hitch assembly." "I know what the rule says." "So do I." Mike climbed down from the cab. He unfolded to his full height, like heavy machinery entering service. Patricia looked up at him. "And who are you?" "Marcus Delaney, licensed transporter, certified mobile stage technician, and owner of the trailer until 9:42 this morning. This equipment cannot remain here." Mike scratched his beard. "You the zoning office?" "I am president of the Maple Crest Estates Homeowners Association." "Ah." His tone contained the same sympathetic recognition one might use upon learning a stranger had swallowed a coin. Patricia pointed to the trailer. "This violates the visual harmony standard." I handed her a copy of Carla Ruiz's email and the relevant HOA provision. She did not take it. "I do not accept documents handed to me without prior board review." "That's fine. I emailed them." "When?" "Yesterday at 4:16. I receive a high volume of correspondence." Mike looked around the quiet street. "From the United Nations?" Patricia's eyes narrowed. "What is the intended use of this trailer?" I gave her another document. She reluctantly accepted it. Her eyes moved down the page. "Mobile marching rehearsal platform." "Yes." Her head came up. "No. It's in the document. I mean, no. You will not operate a marching band facility in this neighborhood." "It's not a facility. This is a residential community. It's an organized musical activity associated with the Lantern County Heritage Parade." Patricia's face went still. I watched the exact second she remembered her amendment. "No," she said again, more quietly. "The activity is exempt under the Community Tranquility Amendment. That exemption was intended for legitimate civic events. This is a legitimate civic event. You are not a school. The exemption includes civic ensembles. It must be appropriately permitted." I handed her the permit. She stared at it. Mike leaned toward me. "This is better than the time they dropped the fiberglass potato." Patricia read every line. Then she looked at the trailer, the permit, and the gathering neighbors. "You are doing this to harass me. I'm providing rehearsal space to a community music organization." "At what time?" "Saturday at 6:01 a.m. A sound escaped her that was half gasp, half tea kettle, filing for divorce. "You cannot possibly believe that is reasonable. It's 1 minute after quiet hours. The restricted period runs until 8. Not for exempt activities. I wrote that exemption. I know. Her eyes sharpened. The board can revoke it. Not without notice, a meeting, and a vote. I can call an emergency session. The permit is already issued. Your documents also require 14 days' notice before changing use restrictions. She looked at me with the dawning horror of someone who had assembled a bear trap, labeled it carefully, and then noticed her own shoe inside it. You think you're clever? No. I think the enclosed body is 34 feet, 11 inches. Mike made a noise like a diesel engine trying not to laugh. Patricia turned and marched back to her golf cart. Her movement had the rigid dignity of a department store mannequin being carried through a fire drill. At the curb, she spun around. This is not over. Officer Rourke's voice came from behind her. It rarely is. His patrol car had pulled up while we were talking. Patricia hurried toward him. Officer, this commercial structure is being installed without association authorization. Rourke stepped out, holding printed copies of my documents. I reviewed the permit. This is an HOA matter. Yes, you should require him to stop. No, he intends to create an intentional disturbance. He intends to host a permitted rehearsal. At dawn. Dawn appears to be legal. Patricia pointed at me. He is weaponizing music. Officer Rourke looked at the trailer. Ma'am, unless the trombones are loaded, that remains a civil issue. He walked over to Mike, checked the wheel placement, verified the trailer was clear of the sidewalk, and returned to his car. Before leaving, he looked at Patricia. He read your rule. You should try it. By Friday afternoon, Patricia had posted 11 times in the Facebook group. She called the rehearsal a planned acoustic assault. She accused me of importing outside agitators with brass equipment. She claimed the trailer might lower property values by 18%, though she did not explain whether the estimate was based on trumpets, trombones, or the volatile sousaphone market. She also created an online petition titled Stop the Dawn Concert. It received 14 signatures. 3 were from her. 1 was Concerned Homeowner. 1 was Concerned Homeowner 2. Someone named Trevor signed it with the comment, "Will there be snacks?" Leonard replied that there would be breakfast biscuits for musicians and spectators. The petition gained 27 additional signatures. At 8:40 Friday night, Patricia came to my door. She was wearing a cream pantsuit and carrying the blue clipboard. Behind her, the golf cart's amber beacon painted slow circles across my garage. I opened the door. Good evening. You need to cancel tomorrow. No. Her jaw tightened. I am offering you an opportunity to de-escalate. I have a permit. This situation has gone far beyond permits. It has gone exactly as far as the permit. You are creating a hostile environment. The band hasn't arrived. Your intent is hostile. My intent is in the application. She drew a sheet of paper from the clipboard. This is a cease and desist directive issued by the association president. I read it. It cited Section 8, Paragraph 14 again. Santa Claus. The numbering issue is immaterial. It's the only number you've used. The board has inherent emergency powers. Where? In the declaration. Which section? Patricia's voice sharpened like a can opener discovering sheet metal. I do not have to litigate every sentence on your porch. You brought the cease and desist. I am warning you that if this event proceeds, the association will impose a $500 special enforcement assessment, pursue injunctive relief, and seek recovery of all legal fees. Was that approved by the board? The board has been informed. That's not what I asked. She leaned closer. Cancel it. No. Her face changed. The rehearsed authority slipped for half a second, revealing something smaller beneath it. Panic. You are embarrassing me. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You fined me because I drove to work. You refused to cooperate. You called my employer. You refused to cooperate. You called the police. You refused to cooperate. You changed the rules to protect the community. And you wrote the exemption. Her eyes flicked toward the trailer. I will not allow that platform to open. You do not have to attend. This is my neighborhood. It's also mine. She stepped back. If you proceed, whatever happens next is your responsibility. No, I said. Whatever you choose to do next is yours. I closed the door. At 5:20 Saturday morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of truck brakes. Big Mike had arrived with breakfast. He carried 2 cardboard trays containing 24 biscuits, 12 coffees, and enough hash browns to reinforce a retaining wall. Leonard arrived at 5:31 in a minivan filled with music stands. The musicians began arriving in 2s and 3s. They were teachers, accountants, mechanics, nurses, retirees, and one orthodontist who played snare drum with the controlled rage of a man who had spent 20 years asking teenagers to wear rubber bands. Howard Pike, the senior sousaphone player, was 71 and shaped like a question mark wearing orthopedic shoes. He had a white mustache and spoke in a whisper that made everything sound confidential. "Which house is hers?" he asked. I pointed toward Patricia's 2-story colonial at the end of the block. Howard nodded. "Good wind direction." By 5:50, the trailer had unfolded. The side wall lifted into an awning. The floor panel lowered into a stage. Safety rails locked into position. Chairs appeared. Music stands clicked open. Cables were taped down. No one shouted. No one blocked traffic. No one stepped onto another person's property. The entire operation moved with the quiet precision of a bank robbery conducted by music teachers. At 5:56, neighbors began gathering. Some brought folding chairs. Elaine Porter arrived in a robe beneath a winter coat, carrying a thermos and her knitting bag. Gordon Lyle stood near the sidewalk, pretending he had merely wandered outside at dawn in loafers. Trevor brought donuts. At 5:59, Leonard called the ensemble to attention. The street was silent. Birds moved through the maple tree. My coffee steamed in the cool morning air. For once, it was hot. At 6 o'clock, my doorbell camera detected movement at the end of the block. Patricia's garage opened. The red golf cart emerged. Amber light flashing. She drove toward us wearing the lavender robe, foam rollers, and a pair of fuzzy slippers shaped like cats. Her clipboard rested on the passenger seat. She stopped so abruptly that one slipper came off. Then she saw the band. That was where this story began. At 6:01, Leonard raised his baton. I stood beside him with the spare baton he had handed me as a joke. "Would you like to count them in?" he asked. "I have no musical training. Neither does half the audience." I looked toward Patricia. She had recovered her slipper and was marching up the driveway. I raised the baton. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first chord hit the street like sunrise wearing body armor. Trumpets flashed. Trombones extended. The bass drum struck with a deep boom that traveled through my ribcage and reorganized several minor regrets. The sousaphones rolled beneath the melody like cheerful thunder. Leonard conducted with crisp, economical movements. The musicians played beautifully. That mattered. This was not random noise. It was disciplined, permitted, civic-minded noise, arranged in measures. Patricia reached the foot of the driveway and shouted something. Nobody heard her. She waved the clipboard. Leonard continued. She stepped onto the driveway. I moved toward her and pointed to a yellow line taped across the pavement. "Please remain behind the audience boundary." "This ends now!" Her voice emerged between musical phrases like a smoke alarm trapped inside a parade. "You're welcome to watch. I am revoking the event authorization. You didn't issue it. I am president of this community. The city issued the permit. I am revoking the HOA exemption. That requires a vote. I am exercising emergency authority. Musical instruments are not an emergency." The band reached the trio section. The piccolo player, a retired pharmacist named Nancy Webb, delivered a run so bright and precise that Patricia physically flinched. "This is targeted harassment," Patricia screamed. "Everyone is facing the street. You aimed the tubas at my house." Howard lowered his sousaphone. "It's a sousaphone." Patricia turned toward him. "I know what a tuba is." Howard looked at me. She does not. Leonard continued conducting with one hand and gestured for Howard to rejoin with the other. Patricia lifted her phone. "I'm live streaming this to document your behavior." "That's fine," I said. "You admit this is retaliation?" "I admit it's a rehearsal. You purchased a 42-foot trailer because I asked you to reduce your truck noise. You fined me because you were non-compliant with a rule that didn't exist. I corrected the rule and added this exemption." Her live stream audience increased rapidly. The Maple Crest Facebook group had apparently awakened. Comments began appearing across her screen. Patricia read none of them. She strode toward the trailer steps. I moved between her and the platform. You cannot enter the rehearsal area. I have inspection authority. Not during an active permitted event. I have the right to inspect any suspected violation. You were warned in writing not to enter the platform. This is association property. It's my driveway. The association maintains an easement for utilities and drainage. I am entering. No. Her eyes widened. You cannot deny me access. I just did. She raised the phone toward my face. Viewers, you are witnessing a resident physically obstruct an official inspection. I held my hands at my sides. I'm standing still. You are blocking me. You're trying to enter a restricted performance platform during active music. I am performing my duty. The band finished the march. Applause broke out. Patricia mistook the silence between pieces for victory. Stop, she shouted at Leonard. By authority of the Maple Crest Estates Homeowners Association, this performance is terminated. Leonard lowered his baton. Ma'am, do you have authority from the city permit office? I have authority over this community. Do you have authority over the Lantern County Heritage Parade? No, but do you direct this ensemble? No. Are you the property owner? The association. Then please remain behind the safety line. He spoke politely, but his tone had the clean finality of a door locking in a bank vault. Patricia's live stream comments multiplied. Elaine glanced at her own phone. Oh, she said. What? Gordon asked. People are sharing it. Patricia stepped over the yellow line. Leonard raised one hand. Ma'am, do not enter the platform. I will not be intimidated by tape. She climbed the first aluminum step. Howard Pike stopped playing. The snare drummer lowered his sticks. Every camera in the audience turned toward her. I said, Patricia, you do not have permission to enter the trailer. I do not require your permission. That statement is being recorded. Good. She climbed the second step. Her fuzzy slipper caught the edge. She lurched forward, windmilled both arms, and grabbed the side rail. The clipboard flew from her hand. It struck the open lid of a bass drum case, bounced once, and slid inside. The lid fell shut. The sound was not loud. It was somehow perfect. Patricia pulled herself upright. One pink roller dropped from her hair and rolled down the ramp like a tiny surrender flag. Big Mike stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to exit the equipment. You stay out of this. I own the service warranty. I am conducting an inspection. You're wearing cat slippers. That is irrelevant. Not to traction. She stepped onto the platform. Leonard backed the musicians away from her. Everyone hold position. Patricia moved toward the conductor's podium. She was still live streaming. This installation is unsafe, she announced. There are exposed wires, inadequate railings, unauthorized structural modifications, and no proof of inspection. Mike pointed toward a clear plastic document sleeve mounted beside the control panel. Inspection certificate is right there. She ignored him. This equipment will be closed immediately. You cannot close private equipment, I said. I can suspend any activity that threatens residents. You have no inspection credentials. As HOA president, I am empowered to identify obvious hazards. Mike folded his arms. Name one. Patricia looked around. Her eyes landed on a cable secured beneath a bright yellow cover. That wire is exposed. It's inside a cable ramp. It creates a trip hazard. The ramp prevents a trip hazard. I nearly fell entering. You tripped over your own cat. The audience laughed. Patricia's face turned red. Her live stream showed more than 600 viewers. Then she made her final mistake. She turned the phone toward herself and said, This is exactly why board presidents must have unrestricted access to private property. Residents cannot be trusted to determine what is safe. I authorized myself to inspect any lot at any time, and I will continue entering homes, yards, garages, or structures whenever I believe a violation may exist. Elaine's knitting stopped. Gordon whispered, Oh no. I looked directly at Patricia's phone. Did the board authorize entry into homes? Patricia swung the camera toward me. The president's enforcement authority is implied. Did the board vote? I do not need a vote for every operational decision. Did the association's lawyer approve that policy? I do not require legal permission to enforce our standards. At the bottom of the driveway, a patrol car arrived. Officer Rourke stepped out. He was wearing civilian trousers, a department windbreaker, and the expression of a man whose day off had been personally vandalized. Behind him came Carla Ruiz from the zoning office and Fire Inspector Martin Hale, both of whom had received Patricia's emergency complaints. Patricia spotted them. Her face brightened with the relief of a person who believed reinforcements had arrived, without checking whose side they were on. "Officer," she called, "I need this event shut down, and I need the property owner cited for obstructing an official inspection." Officer Rourke walked to the trailer steps. "Ma'am, step down. I am preserving evidence. Step down. This platform is unsafe." Fire Inspector Hale examined the rails. "No, it isn't." Patricia pointed at the cable ramp. "Exposed electrical wiring." Hale crouched, inspected it, and stood. "Covered, taped, grounded, and protected." Carla Ruiz checked the placement against a printed site diagram. "The trailer is within the approved footprint." Patricia descended one step. "You're missing the broader violation. This is deliberate harassment." Officer Rourke looked at Leonard. "Do you have a permit?" Leonard handed it to him. Rourke looked at me. "Did you tell her not to enter?" 3 times. "Did she enter anyway?" "While live streaming." Rourke looked at the phones pointed toward the trailer. "Of course she did." Patricia held out her own phone. "I am the HOA president. I have inspection rights." Rourke took the phone, not because she had offered it to him, but because she had thrust it so close to his face that refusing would have required a permit. He read the live stream comments, then he handed it back. "Ma'am, an HOA is not a search warrant. This is not a criminal search. No, it's trespassing. I cannot trespass in my own community. You can trespass on his property. I was performing official duties. You invented those duties." Patricia stepped down another stair. Her remaining cat slipper slid sideways. She grabbed the rail, spun halfway around, and sat abruptly on the bottom step. Nobody touched her. Nobody pushed her. She simply arrived at the seated position with the dignity of a folding chair collapsing during a school assembly. The audience went silent. Patricia looked around. Then the lid of the bass drum case popped open behind her. Her clipboard rose slowly into view. The snare drummer had retrieved it. He held it out. "Ma'am, you dropped your authority." Even Officer Rourke looked away to hide a smile. Patricia stood. "This is not finished." Officer Rourke nodded. "Correct. I still need your identification." "For what?" "Entering private property after being warned not to." "You would cite the elected president of an association for inspecting a violation?" "I would cite anyone who climbs onto somebody else's trailer after being told not to." Patricia's mouth opened and closed. Officer Rourke took out his notebook. "Name? You know my name. I like hearing people say it before I write citations. Patricia Ann Bellwether." "Address? 1189 Lantern Pine Drive." "Date of birth?" She stared at him. He stared back with the emotional energy of an unplugged microwave. Behind us, Leonard quietly moved the musicians back into place. Patricia heard chairs shifting. "You are not starting again." Leonard checked the permit. "We have 58 minutes remaining." Officer Rourke finished writing. He handed Patricia the citation. She looked at the amount. $250? That's the municipal penalty. My association fine was only $100. Rourke nodded. "City government has better stationery." He stepped aside. Leonard raised the baton. Patricia stood at the bottom of the driveway holding the citation in one hand and the recovered clipboard in the other. The foam rollers tilted across her head like a row of emergency buoys after a storm. "Ready?" Leonard called. The ensemble lifted their instruments. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. They began 76 trombones. There were only 4 trombones, but at that volume, the distinction felt academic. Patricia returned to her golf cart. The amber light continued flashing. She attempted to reverse while still holding her phone, clipboard, and citation. One cat slipper became wedged between the brake and accelerator pedals. The cart rolled backward 3 feet, bumped a plastic trash bin, and tipped the bin neatly onto its side. Nothing spilled, because collection had occurred the previous day. The empty bin rolled down the curb beside her, like it had resigned from the association. Officer Rourke watched it go. "This is why we don't combine governance and footwear," he said. Patricia drove home. The rehearsal continued until 7:29. At 7:30, Leonard lowered his baton. The neighborhood applauded. Howard Pike removed his sousaphone and whispered, "Could have used more low brass." By noon, Patricia's live stream had been viewed 18,000 times. By Monday, it had reached 63,000. Someone edited the moment her clipboard fell into the drum case and added the caption, "Authority has left the chat." That video reached 500,000 views. But the embarrassment was not what ended Patricia's presidency. Her own statements did. Elaine Porter called an emergency board meeting for Monday evening. 112 residents attended. The clubhouse could not hold them all, so folding chairs were placed around the pool deck. Patricia arrived in a charcoal suit and carried no clipboard. That was how we knew the situation was serious. Elaine opened the meeting. On Saturday morning, President Bellwether stated publicly that she had authorized herself to enter private homes, garages, yards, and structures without a board vote or legal review. Patricia interrupted. "My statement has been removed from context." Elaine pressed a button. Patricia's live stream played through the clubhouse speakers. "I authorized myself to inspect any lot at any time, and I will continue entering homes, yards, garages, or structures whenever I believe a violation may exist." Elaine stopped the recording. The context appears attached. Gordon cleared his throat. He looked like a man preparing to confess that he had misplaced a small country. "I reviewed the financial records this weekend." Patricia turned toward him. "This meeting concerns enforcement policy. It also concerns $13,840 in legal and towing expenses authorized without a board vote." The room stirred. Gordon continued. $3,200 was paid to Crestline Towing for neighborhood patrols. $5,600 was paid to attorney Robert Gladden for enforcement consultations. $2,100 was spent on compliance materials, badges, signs, branded clothing, and mobile equipment. A resident shouted, "What mobile equipment?" Gordon looked toward the window. Everyone turned. Patricia's golf cart sat outside, amber light mounted on top. Gordon adjusted his glasses. The association purchased the beacon, safety decals, side mirrors, a roof-mounted speaker, and an upgraded battery system. "How much?" someone asked. $2,940. A woman near the back stood. "You spent $3,000 turning a golf cart into a police car?" Patricia raised both hands. "The compliance response vehicle is essential to effective enforcement." A man shouted, "It has cup holders." "They are integrated operational storage." Another resident asked about the fines against me. Elaine read them aloud. "Disruptive vehicular activity, publicly challenging a compliance matter, visually prominent truck placement, industrial tire impressions, commercial mirror accessories." The crowd began laughing. Patricia gripped the edge of the table. These violations were part of an escalating pattern. Elaine looked at her. They were the escalating pattern. My total fines, with late fees, had reached $1,425. The board voted to invalidate all of them. Then Gordon introduced a motion to remove Patricia as president. She demanded a closed executive session. The bylaws did not allow one for removal of an officer during a member meeting. She demanded a legal opinion. The association attorney had resigned that morning after seeing the live stream. She demanded that residents who had attended the band rehearsal be prohibited from voting due to bias. 86 people had attended. The bylaws did not contain a marching band conflict of interest provision. The vote was 98-7. Patricia voted for herself. Twice. The second ballot was rejected. Elaine Porter became interim president. Her inaugural address lasted 6 seconds. "Just try to keep it reasonable, yeah?" The room applauded longer for that sentence than it had for anything Patricia said during her entire administration. The consequences continued. The association's insurance carrier opened a review after receiving the live stream and learning that Patricia had claimed authority to enter private residences. The carrier did not cancel coverage, but it increased the deductible and required updated board training. Crestline Towing refunded part of its patrol fee because the contract had not been properly approved. The board sold the golf cart's amber beacon, speaker, and decals online for $860. Big Mike bought the beacon. He mounted it on the giant lemonade trailer. "It finally has an appropriate level of authority," he said. Patricia received a formal trespass warning. The city reduced her citation after she agreed to complete a community property rights course. According to Elaine, Patricia attended the online course with her camera off and submitted 17 questions about enforcement exceptions. 3 months later, she listed her house. She sold it for $11,000 below the original asking price. and moved to a downtown condominium called the Meridian, where the association prohibited private golf carts, exterior clipboards, and audible administrative disputes in shared corridors. The truck stayed. So did the marching band trailer. I did not use it only once. Big Mike had been right about the rental business. Within 4 months, I had booked it for 3 school fundraisers, 2 veterans events, a wedding, a charity walk, and the Belford Holiday Parade. The rental income covered the payments, insurance, and the cost of replacing 1 hydraulic seal. Leonard's ensemble rehearsed at my house twice more, both times at the civilized hour of 9 in the morning. Howard Pike brought muffins. Elaine's board rewrote the noise policy using actual decibel limits and a clear complaint process. Fines required evidence. Hearings required board votes. No officer could enter private property without permission, an emergency, or lawful authority. The Compliance Oversight Committee was dissolved. The Residential Harmony Initiative disappeared so completely that nobody could determine what it had ever done. Walter Nunn returned to help supervise the pool contract. Children started riding bicycles past my house again, without being warned about unapproved wheel colors. The Hendersons planted sunflowers. Gordon Lyle began attending meetings without looking physically ill. Elaine finished the scarf she had been knitting during my hearing and gave it to Officer Rourke. It was blue, gray, and exactly 7 feet long. He wore it once, looked like a municipal giraffe, and never mentioned it again. As for my truck, I continued starting it at 6:44 each weekday morning. 35 seconds later, I drove to work. Nobody complained. Occasionally, when the engine turned over, I would look down the street toward Patricia's former house and remember the morning she told 18 musicians that she had authority over sound itself. Then I would glance at the trailer beside my garage, where the polished side reflected the sunrise and the faint outline of its old lettering still showed beneath the paint. My truck was never the loudest thing in Maple Crest. It was just the only thing Patricia tried to conduct without a baton. So what would you have done if your HOA fined you for driving to work? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed watching one clipboard lose an argument with a marching band, like the video and subscribe to Sovereign Judgment. These days, my coffee is still cold, but at least I can reheat it to the sound of legally permitted brass.